Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today I'm excited to have my good friend Mr. Forrest McGhee with us here, joining us from Richmond, Virginia. We're going to be talking about how to solve seller problems. At the end of the day, a lot of folks that are in the real estate business, especially early on, don't quite understand that if you can't solve a seller's problem, you can't get paid. So we're going to be talking about how to solve specific problems. We're actually going to go through several different case studies of kind of complicated problems that Forrest has helped solve recently in his business that's allowed him to do deals and make money from. And so a little bit of a different kind of approach to the show, but I think you're going to enjoy it. So Forrest, welcome to the show, buddy. Always good to see you.
It's great seeing you, Mike. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. We've been friends for a long time now, and we're going to be friends for life too, right? You're not going anywhere, are you?
Not today.
You might get in that plane and take off somewhere, but you got to let me know where you're at.
All right. You'll see me.
Yeah. So let's before we jump in, let's talk about, you've been a real estate investor for a long time. You've done a lot of things. You do a lot of creative things, which I always enjoy because it keeps things interesting a little bit, right? So, but tell us a little bit about you and your background as a real estate investor.
So I've been investing for over 11 years. Did my first property in a partnership that ended. Everything has an ending, and so the partnership and the property ended, and then I went out, and my father and I started a business together and kind of learned how to do it right, and took on a mentor and learned how to do it correctly. And then when my business relationship with my father ended, I went and started my own thing about 8 years ago now, maybe a little over 8 years, and been doing Forrest Buys Houses ever since then. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's jump into I think over the past couple of years, with the market been where it's at, there's really been a movement, I'd say, over the past few years. I think you've done probably creative deals for a long time, but that's really kind of become more common. Like, they're not so creative anymore that nobody's ever heard of them before, right? But what are your thoughts on just kind of the market where it's at? People are navigating, I think you have too, in Virginia, navigating like laws changing around wholesaling and stuff like that. Like, any thoughts on just kind of where the market's at with needing to get creative or having to get creative? I know we're going to talk about some specific things here, but compared to where it's been and kind of where you think it's going, maybe.
So there's always going to be a need for us in the marketplace. I think where the market is right now is with the retraction of inventory and available opportunity. You have a lot of people that are showing their true colors, and they're scraping the ground, and they're over promising and under delivering, and so that continues to hurt us, and that's why the real estate, the realtors, lobbyist groups can actually get their foot in the door and change legislation. Is from the bad characters that are in our industry, just doing whatever they feel it takes to get a deal done. So whether that's untruthfulness, or that's misrepresenting facts, or that's locking in high prices and then renegotiating down, and there's just a lot of things that people are doing that aren't really above the bar. Then, like you said, recently with creative structuring not being so creative anymore and more mass marketed, people feel that they can go and they can slap whatever against the wall and it'll stick, and they think that they can take a subject to property and wholesale that sub to for $20,000 to $40,000 down payment. Maybe they can, but I don't believe that. We're doing creative deals where people were just happy that we were able to save their mortgage, and they weren't doing any money down. I remember a couple years ago, there was a lady that called me up, and she said, "Well, how much money do I get down?" I said, well, you're $8,000 behind on your mortgage. So, what do you want? Do you want good credit or do you want some money? And she goes, well, I want good credit. And I said, okay, well, I'll take care of the 8,000. That was the first time that I put any money down on a sub-2 other than, getting it, ready to be rented. We just don't do down payments. And now that's like, the norm. And it takes years and years to recover that money as a down payment on a sub-2. It's not financially smart. It's just market sexy right now. And so, because everybody else is doing it and they bought the course, so they got to do it.
I think a lot of people have been convinced that, like, well, if you can pick up a really low interest rate mortgage, that the real asset is the mortgage itself, not necessarily the house. And so here's why that makes sense for you to pay more for it, because the interest rate's only 3.5% or something like that.
The real asset is the deal, right? The real asset is the tenant buyer, right? So, if we're going to do something like that, we're going to lease option it out. And that's the real asset, is, what you can do on the back end to make that deal work. And then also get paid in a timely manner, because, $300 to $400 a month cash flow, if you can, 10x that or 20x that, that's one thing, right? But really, you want an exit in, a few years. You don't want to carry a 25-year note for 25 years. Jesus Christ, right? We're going to be living on Mars by then. So, you want to get your money out of the deal in a few years. That's my strategy anyway. So picking the right, lease option buyer is the gold in this. And I've been very fortunate, most of the deals I've done. I mean, I have more success exits than I have, taking the house back. But certainly taking the house back is a good exit as well, because, then you got more options. You can get another down payment, or if there's enough equity in the deal, you can just go ahead and move that one down the line and exit that deal entirely. I've found that most people who take the option of us, protecting their mortgage through that program, I've found that in 2 to 5 years, they've forgotten the problem that they were in, and they want to either buy again, or they, their credit's tied up or something like that, or they start asking, hey, when are you going to get out of this deal? They forgot why they're there. They just know that they're there. So it becomes a more and more challenging situation to manage the longer you're taking care of somebody's mortgage.
Yep. Well, let's jump into some very specific examples. So we were just talking ahead of time about some complicated problems that you solved recently. And so let's start off with kind of inherited properties.
So this is not, I got one that I thought of that is an inherited problem, not an inherited property. Let's go there. I had this lady call me up one time, and she had 2 properties that her boyfriend had, and her boyfriend was incarcerated. So what she forgot to tell me is that, she's not an angel either. And so, she was ready to do the deal on these 2 properties. She had a POA for this person, and we started talking some numbers, and next thing I know, she just ghosted me. And I was like, gosh, man, I was so close. Wonder what happened. Well, about 2 months later, her mother called and said, I'm now the POA, and this lady is now incarcerated as well. And so, we need to get rid of these properties. And, I was talking with my daughter the other day, and she said, call Forrest. I've been working with him. And so she called me and got those things in a contract, and I was able to, close that deal, and took 2 properties well below market value, and, wholetailed both of them, made a decent exit on them. But, that lady who called me, she was just so distraught because, her motivation, and even the fellow who owned the house was still, emotionally tied up with this lady that had reached out to me originally, that their motivation was just to get the girl into rehab. And that's what they were going to use their funds for. It wasn't, how much money they can make on the houses. If they had a real life problem, and, this lady was taking care of the grandkids, that was his daughter. She wanted her daughter back, and, wanted to get her in rehab. And this was the money that they could find to do it with. And, so we were able to make that happen.
Sometimes sellers tell you all that stuff, but often they don't. So, like, what do you do to kind of pull back that onion and find motivation from sellers as to what their real objective is?
A lot of it is the time of the conversation. A lot of it is just like, it's not jumping to the conclusion. When I got good in this business, it was when I realized and I had became a believer of the fact that we are doing the best thing by the customer. We are serving our, customer correctly, even though conventional wisdom in real estate says that you need to get the most money for the deal. Oftentimes the value is not in the money, it's in the solution that we provide. And so once I got that belief and instilled in me that, I really am solving people's problems and I really am a solution provider for people, even though I know and and a lot of people know that they could go get more money if they had just a little bit more knowledge. But I'm just solving a problem. And so to answer your question, it takes time to get people to talk. As well as I do, and everybody listening to this knows that the more people talk, the more they say. And, and it just takes that time to understand what the true motivation is. And once you do that, it doesn't happen every time, but a lot of the times you can become the solution through your knowledge and your skill set.
Yeah, you become that trusted advisor, right? Like they've told you more than they've probably told anybody else, probably most of their family even, and you've earned their trust to kind of help them through. It could be your knowledge, like you said. It could be relationships you have, like, hey, I know somebody that can help with this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just you got to take the time. There's a saying that I try to tell myself often is it just takes what it takes, right? If that person's slow rolling or they got a problem but they're just not coming out with it, is you throw a carrot out there and you attempt to get them to pick up the phone next time, and it was some kind of carrot and that's what I pivot to. I tell my team all the time that it's always about the next date, right? Until we're closed, until we have a contract, until we have a check in the bank, it's about the next date, right? Because you are not the only person that can solve their problems, right? I mean, this is a large industry, and further than that, you're not the only one trying to get that lead and get that deal. We have a property under contract right now that we put it out on all the sites that people would know that we're selling this property and stuff like that, and these people are hitting us up and they're going, hey, what's the address, right? And then they're skip tracing and they're calling them out, and they're trying to get us out from the deal, and so there's all kinds of people out there that are can do or trying to do what you do, but if you just stay if you stay in your fundamentals and you stay in your lane, you'll be successful, and if you're a snake, stay in that lane. And if you're somebody like me that just kind of cares about people, then stay in that lane.
Yep.
Because I've tried changing my stripes and it didn't work out for me. I lost sleep. I got stressed out about it. And, there was a time where I doubted my strategy. And there was a time where, I was like, oh, this, that's too high, but let's just take it anyway and renegotiate it. And, it's just unnecessary. It's not my lane. There's a guy I learned from one time that says, I want to do business with people that are looking for me, right? Or, I'm not trying to be somebody else. I'm trying to be the person that they're looking for. So, and if they want me, great. And if they don't, then, not so great, but not so bad.
Yeah, move on. So let's talk about dealing with nasty judgments against the house.
The problem with real estate judgments is they don't necessarily go away, right? People. I kind of said that a minute ago that people forget the problems that they have, right? And they get in these problems years and years ago. They don't even really know that they got a judgment or they got that piece of mail and they're like, what is this? They don't know, right? They're too busy watching TV. And so we have this property right now where we just have to execute a quiet title search, and it's about the price of what the judgments would be, maybe just a few $1,000s more, but still it's going to be a solution, because the problem is with these judgments, they're so old that the companies don't exist anymore, but they're still tied to the property. And, we've tried and tried and tried. And if you're not the person who's dead, right, you can't, you can't even speak on their behalf anymore, because we're just a transactor, right? And we don't even own the property at that point. So those judgments, man, they stick like glue, that's for sure. And they take some time to get off.
If you can get them off, sometimes you can't get them off, right?
Sometimes I think the easy part is getting the contract, right? Getting it to closing, getting it to closing sometimes is more difficult than actually getting the contract.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about sellers that are or siblings, I guess, probably that inherit a house that are kind of in disagreement of what to do with the house.
Yeah, so we had a deal just recently. This guy was talking to us, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna sell the house. Me and my brother, I have his POA for some reason. This one happens to be in prison as well, and he goes, I said, yeah, but there's another name here, and it's a lady's name. He goes, that's my effing sister. I said, okay, well, I said, but she's on the deed. He goes, I don't talk to her. I don't give two craps about her. I was like, well, that really doesn't make any difference. I said, the fact is, we're going to need to talk to this person and get them on board with this. And he's like, well, I ain't talking to her. I said, okay, all right. Would you mind if we talk to her? And he goes, yeah. So anyway, we ended up talking to the lady, and her feelings pretty much match and mirror his feelings. And but you tote a few $1,000 check in front of somebody, or potential check in front of somebody, that changes their tune, especially when they weren't expecting anything. And so
Right.
we were able to get the whole family in agreement, and at the same value, at the same price, we were able to navigate that and get everybody to agree to the sale of the property. And they still don't talk to each other. So we're just doing all the family communication. We're like the counselor.
That's right. Yeah. The worst is when they don't agree, or they think that there's some pot of gold there waiting for them, and they don't really realize, well, it needs a ton of work and it had a mortgage on it, whatever, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, but that's more common, right? Is that they don't agree on the price.
Yeah, that's oftentimes, or they have a realtor friend. I have a friend of mine that they're selling their primary residence, and the wife thinks that the house is worth more than he does, and he's a realtor, and she thinks that he's selling it for too cheap. And so yeah, you always have somebody somewhere that thinks you're not doing your job correctly, or the other one that I think is really good is when they've all told each other that they're going to get like a $10,000 check, and so that's what the house is worth the siblings plus times $10,000, and that's what the house is worth, even though it has no true value of the real estate in question here. But everybody feels like they're not going to get less than a $10,000 check, and that's that. We had one of those deals. It was a piece of dirt. And we had everybody's signature on there. We had agreement. We had 8 siblings in agreement, and then we just couldn't offload the property, and so we tried to renegotiate to a respectable level, and everybody's heart was set on $10,000. They wouldn't change.
They already had it spent, probably.
Yeah, exactly. That used Lexus, right? Yeah.
So let's talk about Tired Landlords. So a lot of people don't realize, if the home ownership rate in America, and it's different by state, somewhere around 62 to 65%. The rest of that are rentals, right? So it's like 1 in 3 houses in America is a rental property. And when I tell people that, sometimes people that are not outside of our industry, or when I'm talking to new or coaching students or things like that, I'm like, hey, when you drive home tonight, 1 in 3 houses you drive past on average is a rental, right? And people are like, wow, I never imagined that. But the other interesting fact is, something north of 80%, 80 to 90% of those are owned by somebody that owns one, right? So they're not professional landlords. They're usually landlords by accident. They just kind of inherited it, or they bought a move up house, or they got married, and one of them had, they had 2 houses and they just kept one as a rental, so they're not professional landlords. And it's easy for them. I say, if you're a landlord and you have a rental, you either are having a nightmare or it's okay for now, but the nightmare's coming, right? Especially if you just have one. But we buy a lot of houses from Tired Landlords, and so talk about like some of the things that you do to help make those deals happen.
We do whatever it takes. So we had the ability to purchase these properties with the tenants in place. Um, and the selling point is, if there's a tenant in there, the selling point is the owner just doesn't want to deal with it anymore, whether they haven't gone up on the rent or whether they aren't getting paid, whatever that happens to be. We had a property one time, not too long ago, maybe last year, that this lady called me. She was an older lady. It wasn't inherited. She had it for a long, well, yeah, it was inherited from her husband, but she had it. She had dealt with this problem for about 15 years. And the tenant was, I mean, God bless him. He was a Air Force veteran. He was dying of cancer, and he was paying $400 a month where market rent was like $1,400. And he just mailed the rent and a check, every month, and she hadn't even heard from him in like 5 years. And then finally he called and said, "Hey, the toilet's falling through the floor. Can you have a repair person come through and take a look at it?" So she had a repair person come and take a look at it, and he said, "This house is termites holding hands. That's all this house is." And the floor was literally caving in, and so like there was gaps this big between the bottom of the wall and the floor in certain places of the house where it's just been collapsing. And so she said, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "Well, we can try, we can take a look at it." And so we entered into an agreement, and I went pretty low, and then I went and actually took a look at it and met this fella, and he showed me some of the problems, and I went back to her and said, "Man, I mean, this house is unsalvageable." And she goes, "Well, what am I going to do?" I said, "Well, I mean, I'll help you. I'll take Walt. I'll take the property, but we're going to have to revisit, the conversation on this." And so we did. We ended up coming to a pretty good number. And then I took Walt and I said, "Walt, we're gonna have to take some time and figure out, where you're gonna go. I'm gonna keep your rent the same, but we pretty much, I'm not gonna kick you out, but you pretty much need 90 days to find somewhere to go." So I helped him, reconnect with his son in Florida, and they ended up moving down there and getting resettled down there, and then we cleaned the house out and sold it to somebody who thought it was a really good deal, and started doing a bunch of unpermitted work. And city shut down, and still shut down. Glad that's not my problem.
Those are bad ones where the seller keeps the rent really low because they feel bad or something, and then the tenant doesn't complain about the deterioration because their rent's too good. They don't want it to go up, and it's just a matter of time before things come to a head, I guess.
Yeah, if you're a landlord and you're not paying attention to your properties, that's that nightmare that's going to creep up on you, right? Yeah. The worst thing that can happen is no communication or no checkups on those properties. That's for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you were telling me about another one where a woman was needed to go into hospice, but she was a hoarder, so hospice wouldn't come into our house. So tell me about that one.
Yeah, that was just an inbound lead, and that's how we do most of our leads, and we just got this lady that called. It was actually the sister, and she said, "My sister needs somewhere to go. We have this property. We can't afford anything, and she needs hospice care." And hospice came to do a welfare check to look at the property, and they said this house is unsafe for their staff, so they refused to come and give her the care she needed. So they reached out to us looking for a solution, and it was a pretty good deal for us because I got to do what I like doing. I got to solve somebody's problems, genuine problem, and we were able to get her into a single wide trailer that was clean. That was it was single level. It had a ramp going up to it. It was easy for her to get in and out of. It was hospice. It was cool with going in there. And then we took that hoarder property and had it cleaned out, and then we actually did that in one of our holding companies, and then we ended up seller financing that out. And so we got right on the first day of closing with seller financing, we had no money in the deal, is what I'm trying to say. And we just put the down payment on the seller financing, and so now we get, monthly check every month as a reminder that we did a good job.
That's great. Yeah. So what would you say? We talked about a couple of case studies here, a few different case studies. Like overall, like what do you, I guess if you were going to give advice to real estate investors that are not focused on solving seller problems, they're more focused on themselves, like what advice would you give people as to how to make these deals happen?
Just be you, right? I know some people that, we've talked to, and I remember one guy in particular, he goes, I don't care about any of that shit. He said, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to cuss here probably. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't care about any of that stuff. I just want to, make as much money as possible. And, that's his goal. That's his why, And so if that's your goal, that's your why, and, it's about you and your family, then, be authentic, just be you, right? But, don't try to, if you, these creative deals are going to come, all these opportunities are going to come all the time. As long as you're looking for them, they're going to come. And, you just, try to tie your name to as many of them as possible. And
This is why people sell at a discount, right? If it was a clean, pretty house with no issues, they would just sell it on the MLS.
Most of the time, people have talked to somebody else already, right? Whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, whether it's, a realtor friend or something. Most of the time, they know why they're calling you. Right, they know that they got a problem, whether it's a time, whether it's a property condition, or whether it's a health issue. They know they got a problem. And kind of back to what we said earlier, if you take the time required to to get that information, you can figure it out. But it just takes time. I know people in this business that they don't care. They don't care about nothing. They just sling contracts and hope that enough of them stick to where they can go and make enough money. They just don't care. But that's just not me. I just got to be true to myself.
That's great. Well, Forrest, if you don't mind, let me ask you. You've been a part of Investor Fuel for a long time now. You've been in forever.
6 years.
Would you mind just sharing your thoughts on being a part of the Investor Fuel community?
Yeah. I love the group. I do. I love you. I love, the people that I've met, the relationships that I've met. I talk to people that I've met in this group on a daily basis. I think that, what you've created and what has grown is an amazing tool. I came to Investor Fuel. I went to Carrot Camp and got a free pass to Investor Fuel, and it was in our swag bag. And I was like, well, that's cool. And so I ended up coming to the first one, and I just, been coming ever since. When my time permits. I miss a couple here or there, but for the most part, I enjoy it. Another thing that's good is the ongoing content during the week and every week consistently, and you'll see that. I know you guys have a lot of members, but I think that you kind of get lost from the group if you're not attending these weekly events. So people to know your name and stuff like that, and you'll see that it's a smaller core group that go to these events, and I value that a lot as well, because I can proudly say that I am a member of that small core group that usually tries to go to these events, in the Zoom calls and so forth. So. Yeah, if you're looking for a place to grow, when I started, I didn't have. I think I had one VA, and we built a business out of it. And business, always has challenges, but we ended up building a business through, the education and the growth and the networking through other people that have been I was. So, yeah, it was invaluable. Investor Fuel has been invaluable to me.
Yeah, well, glad you're a part of it, buddy, and. I think that part of it too is you're a big giver. Like, you're willing to do anything for anybody, and I think that's part of our culture. Is that I think a lot of real estate investors, not certainly most, but a lot of the type of people that would be interested in our group also want a place to come share and give their knowledge and give back and help one another. It's this reciprocal kind of peer-to-peer relationship thing doesn't exist in a lot of places,
No, there's a lot of takers, but I don't see that in investor fuel. I mean, I see there's there's definitely more givers there than people just trying to absorb the information. So.
Yeah. Well, Forrest, appreciate that. If folks want to learn more about you or connect in any way, where can they go to connect?
Yeah, so my front-facing website is forrestbuyshouses.com, but that phone number goes straight to my cell phone, and anybody can reach out to me, and we can have a conversation if you're in the Richmond, Virginia area, and you want to connect, or Richmond, Virginia is kind of small, so we have 60 miles either direction. You got water, mountains, Northern Virginia, so. Reach out, if you're around here, and we'll connect.
Awesome. Well, we'll add some links down below in the show notes. So good to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining us today. Everybody, appreciate you for listening in. We'll see you on the next show.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.